strategic planning that is going on into turning this brand around. So at any point that you have any questions, like for our dialogue today to be interactive, to ask questions and then also be able to provide feedback. But before we get started, I always like to ask, how many people in the room are interested in becoming an entrepreneur? And those of you that are not, I'm just very curious to know why not, right? And so hopefully by the end of the day today, I can convince you that entrepreneurship very much should be a way for you to be able to create not only a career path and job opportunities for yourself, but also for other people, and then an opportunity and avenue for you to be able to generate generational wealth, which is also very important. So those of you who have never considered entrepreneurship before, you're in a dynamic business school, and I'm for certain that the entrepreneurship courses and programs here can position you well for success as an entrepreneur. So as Richard has talked about my background in the food service management business, I started Perkins Management Services 16 years ago this year. I was 25 years old whenever I actually started my company. So one of the other myths is that, you know, you have to be of a certain age to start a business, you know, and that's not true. You can also start very young when you have a dream, a goal, and a vision in order to be able to start a company. I decided to go into contract food service management, which is one of the highest, highly competitive industries next to construction, in my opinion, that exists, dominated by very large companies like Aramark, Sodexo, Compass, Chartwells, companies like that. And we were able to establish a niche market and grow our company from just one client, 2 employees, to now, you know, over 20 operating units in that company, now over 1,000 employees. That positioned me to be able to acquire Fuddruckers. And so as many of you have had the opportunity to experience Fuddruckers hamburger, you know, I'm biased and venture to say that Fuddruckers truly does have the world's greatest hamburger. You know, it was nostalgia for me. I grew up eating Fuddruckers hamburgers and having the opportunity to initially be able to become a part of the brand as a franchisee, which was my very first opportunity to purchase 14 locations from Luby's. Then the opportunity to become the franchisor and acquire the entire brand presented itself. So in taking over the Texas market, Arizona market, Virginia, Missouri market, and Kansas, we saw that the brand had contracted quite a bit, because in some of these locations and states that we went into, there were only maybe 1 or 2 locations. Still delivering a great product, but the leadership at the time lacked vision. And how many people understand that being a visionary is very, very important, especially in business? And so when I went through the process of evaluating Fuddruckers, I needed to determine, in purchasing this company, is there anything that I would be able to do differently that would reposition this brand in the marketplace in a red ocean? How many of you guys are familiar with that terminology? Red ocean, blue ocean strategy, by show of hands. Okay, we're gonna talk a bit about that today. In a red ocean, meaning a mature market, a market that is already that already exists, that is flooded with sharks in this example. And here I am coming along trying to determine how I'm going to be able to turn a red ocean blue. And so when we think about Fuddruckers, the company was established in 1980, the year that I was born. So that was 40 years ago. So when we look back, you know, at that point, Fuddruckers can be credited with establishing the gourmet hamburger sector. And so, you know, early on, people have looked to Fuddruckers as the subject matter expert in the industry. You saw then, you know, other hamburger brands then enter the market and try to duplicate what Fuddruckers has done and not necessarily been able to accomplish in terms of the menu, the product, and the quality. But from a marketing standpoint, from a vision standpoint, they have, and as a result, have more locations, have more brand awareness. And as a result of that, Fuddruckers has not been in the front of mind anymore. And so when I reflected back on what I knew Fuddruckers to be growing up and what influenced me as a consumer to want to go to Fuddruckers, it was a bit antiquated, right? So when we think about now, today's consumer, how we reach today's consumer, Fuddruckers has lagged in many areas in terms of being in line with what is expected from today's consumer. From a technology standpoint, it's non-existent. The brand did not have a mobile application. In today's world, you have to have, how many people have a Chick-fil-A app? How many people have the Starbucks app, right? And so when you think about, how, smartphones drive pretty much everything that we do now, if you are a food company and you don't have that, you're irrelevant, okay? And so as I began to reflect back on all of the challenges that the brand itself was experiencing, a lot of it had to do, in my opinion, with a lack of vision, a lack of motivation, and investment in the brand. And so when I began to strike off things that I thought that were more critical to whether or not this actually was a dying brand rather than a neglected brand, because that was really what led to the buying decision, whether I move forward or not, whether I'm going to be able to do something that could turn this brand around. If the brand was on life support, it could not be revitalized, and it was not resilient, it would have been a bad investment. But because I was able to determine that the brand itself was simply neglected, and that there were things that I could do to reposition the brand and bring the brand into what I consider to be more modern times, that it is an investment that in the short term, with these things being implemented, I would be able to turn this company around and be able to benefit financially from the upside. And so that's what led me to take the risk and acquire the company. And so, I consider that to be the dilemma and the challenge, right? The dilemma being Fuddruckers presently is a brand that is not in the forefront and present of the consumer's mind. People speak about Fuddruckers in a past tense. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to Fuddruckers. Or when I was a kid, my parents would take me here for my birthday. Oh, I remember Fuddruckers had great hampers. Right? Everything was spoken of in a past tense. Everyone that I would have conversation with, it was becoming a bit disheartening that I wasn't hearing more comments about, oh yeah, I was just at Fuddruckers last week. Oh, they've got great hamburgers. Me and my friends, we go after the game, so on and so forth. It was not that. And so, as I began to put a strategic plan together in consultation with KPMG, I'm sure you all familiar with KPMG, management consulting firm. We hired KPMG to help with the evaluation of the brand and looking at industry analysis and the consumer's approach and the way they view the brand and all of those things helped me to really fully understand, where Fuddruckers was. And so, we went through a very competitive process. There were 150 companies. We were one of the 150 that competed, and we were the successful company to acquire the brand. And as a result of that, it's been just a whirlwind of things that have happened. We inherited a brand that was owned by a company that is currently going through dissolution. They are currently liquidating their assets. Management resources right now are very limited. And as a result of that, I began to see the brand at risk. I closed lightning fast. Okay, from the time we signed the asset purchase agreement to the time I wired them the money and we signed the purchase contract was probably 30 days, because I felt like if it took any longer than that, if I could not take the controls that the company put down on the line. And so it was very important for me to do that. So here I am establishing a new company and not roll Fuddruckers into Perkins. And I did that intentionally because when you evaluate a company, you want to find out why did it wind up being in the situation at its end right now. Many of you know that Luby's is a Texas institution. Luby's, had, at one point over 100 plus cafeterias, but Luby's was that company's bread and butter. It was their primary focus. And as a result of that, Fuddruckers became secondary to Luby's in a number of ways. And as a result of that, the same time and attention that it requires to compete in a red ocean can't be part-time. It has to be full-time. And you have to have dedicated people in order to be able to focus on renewing your value proposition to your customers. And that wasn't happening, okay? And so for me to duplicate that and incorporate Fuddruckers into Perkins Management, an already established company, and share G&A, right? I was doing the same thing. So as a result of that, we didn't take that approach. So we established an infrastructure independent of my primary company to manage the Fuddruckers business. So in addition to negotiating, well, competing, then negotiating the asset purchase agreement, signing the purchase agreement, then closing, we're also building a management infrastructure at the same time to house the new company that we just purchased, right? So that's the challenge, right? And evaluating the people that I brought into the company to ensure that they had a blue ocean mindset. And effectively what that means is thinking outside of the box, not traditional archaic thinking, and finding out how we put this brand on offense. And that's what I continue to preach to my staff. We are not going to be a reactive organization. We're going to go on offense with the quality of food that we have, the legacy brand that we have, the brand recognition that we have. This brand should be on offense, right? And so there are a lot of things that Fuddruckers does that differentiates itself from its competitors that people don't know about. And because of that, it has created a competitive disadvantage for us as a brand. So when I started to develop the strategy for how we would stabilize the brand first, find ways to improve it, and then look to refranchise the brand, we had to first define who our target customers were. That's a very, very, very important thing to know. And one of the things that I would do when I was interviewing people, and even in discussions with Luby's management, I would ask that very question: who is our target customer? Who are we targeting? How are we targeting them? Why are we targeting them? And no one had a real answer, right? No one really knew who our target customers were. We talked more about the product, what we serve, and how we serve it, and the perceived value that we give in our restaurants, okay? And we believe that, but we aren't our customers, right? That's our approach. You are who your customers say you are, right? But if you aren't getting that data, you aren't getting that intel, you're not connected and engaged with your customers, then you're serving yourself, right? We saw a lot of that, okay? And so when I began the process of determining who our target customer is, it was a bit non-traditional. So you all may not know, I'm also an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at the business school at Howard. So I interact with undergraduate students quite a bit. My primary business provides food services for colleges and universities. So I'm on college campuses all the time. So the target group, the new customer, those of us who are familiar with Fuddruckers and know Fuddruckers were introduced to it by our parents, right? The new customer, the new target customer has no clue who we are, all right? And I'm gonna give you an example of that. So I grew up in the 90s. I knew a different NBA than everybody else knows right now, right? So I knew an NBA that was very physical. It was an inside-out game, right? I'm probably the biggest Shaquille O'Neal fan you probably ever meet. And so I remember how physical the game was. It was played very different. It was an era that was dominated by the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan. And so many of my students were Kobe Bryant and LeBron James fans. They thought they were the greatest basketball players that ever lived. But I knew a different NBA. So although I was not the biggest fan of Michael Jordan, I could not deny that he was, in my opinion, arguably, the greatest basketball player to ever live. So the pandemic, gave people a lot of time. So they were watching. How many of you saw the 6-part series on the Bulls, right? So my students got the opportunity to see a different NBA. So when they saw, that 6-part series on the Chicago Bulls, they then began to question whether or not they actually chose, the best athlete as their role model, because they got to see, they knew of Michael Jordan, but they really did not know who Michael Jordan really was. And so as I listened to them talk about that, it taught me something about how you constantly have to renew your brand proposition and value to your customer base. So I had Coke in on Monday, and because in my mind I'm saying, well, everybody knows Michael Jordan. Everybody knows why he's Jordan. Everybody knows why he has one of the largest brands that has ever existed. But the reality is the same group that I'm targeting to introduce Fuddruckers to weren't buying Jordans, right? So I had a Coke exec in on Monday who recently left the Jordan brand, was with the Jordan brand for 8 years. And she told me, she said, when I walked in the door, she said, we were down in every area, every category, because the new generation was absolutely not buying Jordans. And we thought we were gonna have to just shut this whole brand down, right? We were gonna have to change our focus. We were gonna be secondary. She said, we just didn't know how to target this group because Jordan was 50 years old, right? And the kids didn't know who he was. And the more she continued to talk, the more I'm seeing how what you did yesterday, especially in my business, is completely irrelevant. You're only as good as the next meal that you serve. And then finding and understanding your target group and renewing your value proposition is so key. And I'm thinking Jordan brand is $1 billion, organization, and they wouldn't be having these problems for sure, right? No, but the reality is that you can never get comfortable, you can never get complacent, because when you do, Adidas comes along, does a partnership with Kanye West, because they get it. They know why these students, what influences them to buy things, and now look at Adidas, who was dying on the vine, out of here, right? They understood their target customer. They understood consumer behavior. They made one brand partnership that revitalized that company, and then they turn around and turn that brand around and look at what they were able to accomplish, right? Based on understanding your target customer and how to target them and what influences them to influence their decision making to buy one thing over the other, right? And that is the delta that you have to solve, right? So when I talk to my current team about understanding our target customer, we first have to define who it is, right? And so as we have in this conversation, I'm saying, so, well, who is our target customer? Everybody's just drawing a blank. Everybody's drawing a blank. So, well, what do we sell? Gourmet hamburgers, right? We sell gourmet hamburgers. So our target customer are people who love gourmet hamburgers, right? Now, people who love gourmet hamburgers come from all different walks of life. They're all different, right? So that means that in order for you to be able to target people who love gourmet hamburgers, you absolutely have to know each one of those demographics and how to target them, because they're all unique and they're all different, right? And so, that makes your marketing efforts more targeted when you fully understand that. So how do you go about identifying people who love gourmet hamburgers? Is there anybody in the market right now that you know that claims to be a subject matter expert on being a gourmet hamburger? No right or wrong answer. Just based on what you know in the market right now. Is there a subject matter expert in gourmet hamburger? Somebody who steps out there right now and says, we define what your experience for a gourmet hamburger should be. Abdai. How do you think that they do that?
They kind of target what I would consider like the hipster crowd of hamburgers.
Yeah.
So like these are the different styles, like they're very, very specific, and like they have their buffalo blue hamburger, they have like a tuna hamburger, and it's just hamburgers that aren't hamburgers really. It's not what you would think of as a traditional hamburger, but since they're doing all these other things like a hamburger, they're saying we know how to do all of it this way.
Do you believe that the industry recognizes Hobdoddy as a subject matter? You know, I don't either. So I've not been able to find anyone who will tell you this is what your experience should be when you want a gourmet hamburger, right? So that's me. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be the one who steps out there and says, when you want a gourmet hamburger, you should come to Fuddruckers, and here's why, right? I wonder why I wasn't able to find someone. So I'm a former football player, right? So we are all, when there's a pick is thrown, who the first person is, anybody in here is a linebacker with a defensive end, you looking for the quarterback, right? Because you're trying to go find one that you can pick off. And I was looking for somebody to go hit, right? And I'm saying, I've got to make some noise in this industry. So I've got to fight out of this corner that I've been backed into. Now, who can I challenge? Who can I challenge? And I'm looking around saying, who's claiming something that I should own, which is the lane of being a gourmet hamburger, right? As a founder and established in this marketplace by Phil Romano, who had a vision to create the world's greatest hamburger, right? Who introduced something, right, that, you know, was very definitive, right? But it's in essence something that is unfinishable, right? He created something that's not finishable. To say that you have the world's greatest hamburger, I mean, not just restricting it to a region, right? A state, a country, the world's greatest hamburger. That's a pretty bold proclamation, right? And in order for you to be able to maintain that, right, that you constantly have to renew your blue ocean. You constantly have to evolve, right? So can one person do that? Absolutely not. Think about it. There's been 4 generations of leadership of Fuddruckers. 4, right? And this is the 4th liquidation, right? So everybody's looking to me to figure it out. And I've gone through 4 generations of leadership to understand from Romano's original vision, explosive growth, which you'll determine as you go forward that growing too fast is just as bad as not growing at all, okay? So that's really what led to the first bankruptcy, was the rapid growth, okay? But I mean, a visionary man, right, who's been very successful in a litany of just about every restaurant brand that he's touched has been very successful. Someone that I admire and look up to. But the 2 generations of leadership behind him weren't able to figure this thing out, right? So we know that the hamburger sector is a red ocean. Gourmet hamburger sector, right, is one that has in some ways created a blue ocean within a red ocean. But the reality now is that there have been new entrants. So when you think about Shake Shack, which teeters on this concept of a gourmet hamburger, Mooyah, which teeters on that, Hobdoddy's, BurgerFi, these other companies, right? But nobody's stepping out there to say that they compete on quality and defining themselves as a subject matter expert in the gourmet hamburger sector. So Fuddruckers is going to do that, right? We're going to do that. We're going to be unapologetic about it, be unashamed about it. We're going to tell people what makes us the best, right, and stand on it. Do you think that McDonald's would challenge us as having a better quality product?
No.
Why not? doesn't compete on quality. They compete on value, price, value. What if I told you that one of the biggest mistakes that Fuddruckers made was trying to compete with fast food? Not knowing your target customer, not understanding who your target customer is, what their influences are, will have you wayward. You will be all over the place, and that will make you unsuccessful. You have to know and understand who your target customers are and not waver. Fuddruckers has taken on this discounting mentality, but we want to compete on value and not quality. Because we didn't step out there and say that we're a subject matter expert in gourmet hamburger, that here is why our burger costs what it costs. Here is, we hand make our buns fresh in the restaurant every day. We're the only place that you can come to and choose different size patties. And you can also choose what temperature that you want that patty cooked at, and you can top it however you want. We leverage that customization. You own it, it's your burger. You created it from the time you walked in the door to the time you left. It was your experience, you made it, right? That's who we are, okay? But we haven't been telling people that. But what are we doing? Selling that gourmet hamburger, right? For $6. Was it 7, 8, 9? We got this 7, 8, 9 thing that we're doing to try to respond to fast food. You can't sell a gourmet hamburger at fast food prices because you are training your customer base that you are a discount brand, right? Now, you can't say that you're a gourmet hamburger that sells a premium product, right? And then devalue it by discounting it. Everybody understand what I mean about value proposition? And then ensuring that, you know, when the people, you know, you can't, I've never walked into Louis Vuitton and they pointed to me to the sales section. I've never gone to Burberry or Versace and they said, well, these items, these pieces are on sale. Luxury brands, gourmet brands do not do that. Why don't they do that? Because then now you're pulling yourself out of your lane and you're trying to compete in fast food because completely different demographic, compete on completely different factors, right? We can't be successful there because McDonald's sells to its franchisees a supply chain that works for them, right? You know, that's why they had that strategic alignment between their customer, the corporate, their franchisees, supply chain, and then their customer, right? Because through volume, they're able to generate, it's like a machine, right? I mean, they're able to generate profitability, right? Through economies of scale, right? So that the profitability is driven by that, right? And so, you know, we sell experiences. We're a destination place. We're the place that you come to whenever you want a gourmet hamburger, right? We're not fast food, but we took ourselves out of our lane and put ourselves in the lane with people that had drive-thrus, people that appeal to value, right? We're doing, you know, $6 meals, and you know, we created a 0.25 patty, a thin patty, and you know, trying to react to the fast food industry, and then we failed at it. Okay? And the investments were not placed in areas that helped us to better target and market to the target customer that we should be. And we had a very narrow focus, right? You know, there was no strategic analysis. I asked for strategic analysis done on the company. You know, strategic analysis is tough. You know, I mean, it's a self-evaluation, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, multiple, you know, internal versus external. And when you have to look internal, you know, to yourself to figure out, you know, you know, what those weaknesses are. You know, it's easy to list your strengths, right? But the weaknesses, you know, it's tough. So we went through that exercise. I mean, it was pretty tough, but we went through it. But going through it helped us to be honest about who we were and where we are. Right? And helped us to then determine how do we climb out of this, right? So high level, some of the things that we've got to do to turn this brand. Identify who our target customer base is, which we've done. Define strategic marketing initiatives for each of the various segments that we're going to target, very, very specific. Invest in technology, develop a mobile application, a loyalty program, curbside to go, third-party delivery, okay, getting back involved in the community, right? Getting involved in higher education. When you got a Fuddruckers on campus, you're renewing your Blue Ocean. You're reintroducing the brand to new customers, right? Because a college gives you that exposure. That's why Chick-fil-A is so successful. You know, Chick-fil-A is so successful because, I mean, they're always in the front of mind. I went to the University of Maryland a couple of months back, and I found the student center, because we're working with Chick-fil-A on the Perkins side, I just following the Cubs. You know, the people coming with trash bags that are clear, by the way. Why do you think the trash bags are clear? Marketing. You know, you see Aquafina label here, carrying a trash bag, I'm still marketing, right? That's all I saw in the trash bag. I said it to the general manager whenever I got there. I said, I found you just by following the trash guy, following the people with the cups. You know, hey, this is where everybody was either coming from, they were going to, right? So college and university is important. We overlook that group altogether, you know? Altogether. I mean, just very narrow-minded in terms of how we didn't respect the scientific methodology of marketing and brand positioning. No one ever really focused on that. And as a result of that, we lagged behind. So we're not going to do that, okay? And so when I think about, you know, sticking to our core values and not discounting and putting, now we've trained the customer base to expect that. I got a few of my managers here that would tell you that if a customer didn't get their coupon, they're very confrontational at the point of sale. You know, you're not doing the 7, 8, 9 or 6, 7, and 8, whatever the combo. You know, we start phasing this stuff out. People are like, okay, well, now we're the value place. Okay, we're the value. We've discounted our brand. We've discounted our value proposition. You can't sell something that's a gourmet product at fast food prices. It just doesn't work. Right. So now you got franchisees who are unprofitable. You got corporate locations that are unprofitable. You know, the high food costs is going up. Okay, labor costs is going up. Everything around you is going up, but you still discount. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster, right? Any finance majors in here? So it's a recipe for disaster, right? So when you think about, you know, all of those things that were influencing the brand, I knew that I could identify where the problems were and fix them. And that's what I wanted to do. Because I knew that I would be able to get this ship righted. And, you know, I'm not going to be able to do it on my own. I have a dynamic team, but we are very strategic in our approach, how we want to go about repositioning this brand and getting it turned around. I have a benefit of a 40-year-old legacy brand that, you know, I don't really have to explain it to a lot of people. They know it. They come to expect Fuddruckers to be, you know, very quality whenever you come. But at the same time, you know, from a marketing standpoint, we're not in front of mind. We've got contracts at NRG that, you know, we're selling burgers, you know, out there. We've got 12 or 13 concession opportunities out there, but we just opened one on a college campus. You know, we're going to be, you know, looking to do more of those things, kind of reposition ourselves as a brand. But before we grow, we've got to get these things done first, right? So our first step in our strategic plan is to stabilize the company. Second step in our strategic plan is to reposition the brand. Our third phase will be growth. And so we've given ourselves 6 months to get through phase 1 and 2 to look to in 2022 growing. Now we've been inundated because we've had a lot of positive press about the brand being saved from new franchising. People excited about the brand, want to see the brand survive, get the brand repositioned, right? But you know, before I can capitalize on that, I realize that I must have a very strong foundation before we grow. So the biggest mistake that I could make would be, you know, and it's very tempting, to start growing right now on a weak foundation. Our supply chain is not as strong as it should be. Our relations naturally with franchisees have to be repaired. They have not necessarily gotten the support that they needed. They didn't have the strategic planning at the highest level to keep the brand competitive. We did not make the investments in technology. Those things that we're doing now are going to stabilize the brand and turn the brand around. So this is a real life opportunity for you to be able to really witness a brand that has not necessarily was dying on the vine because of a lack of consumer preference, but more so because of a lack of vision and commitment to that brand from a management standpoint. And so I think, you know, I probably would have overpaid it for it if I did not believe that the things that I'm talking to you now were the things that could turn the brand around and get back to its heyday of 500 plus operations. So I said I was going to stop at about 20 to 30 minutes worth of questions, but that's Fuddruckers' current state and future state in a nutshell. So at this point, I'm going to yield and open the floor up for any questions that you all may have. So thank you for having me this morning also.
FTMBA masterclass right there. I don't know about you guys. Alex, you got a question?
Hey, good morning, Nicholas.
Good morning.
My question for you is, how are you going to get, or what is your strategy to get every level of management down to the individual at the point of sale to embody your vision and your goals?
And so, you know, that's a very good question. Thank you. It is embracing philosophy that needs to be redefined. And it should be represented at each level of our organization. And that is one of the most difficult things to do, is to translate from my heart and mind through and to and through another individual to deliver that experience for our customers. So, you know, our training managers are tasked with really, because we redesign it and redeveloping everything about Fuddruckers, right? Down to our customer experience. But we don't use the word customer, we use the word guest. And they're conditioned in my mind to say that our guest experience whenever they come into our restaurant, which is the most critical touch point, right? Is that customer experience. And so it's training at every level, right? Establishing that philosophy, retraining our existing staff from office and executive staff to our internal and external customer. Internal customer being our franchisees. You know, we never viewed them as partners. We never treated them as partners. So it's a customer service attitude that I'm having to even establish in my office to handle franchisees as customers, right? So it was never that. It was more of a kind of dictatorship from the franchisor to the franchisee, and it created a breach, right? You know, at the guest level and the exchange with through our execution and that guest experience, that same customer service experience that we want to be able to create in our office has to be translated. And so Jackie and Jeremy and Jordan that are here, part of my team, meet about that frequently, and they've already started that process, right? For me I took over 14 stores, they were all unprofitable during COVID, every last one of them. It took me, 60 days? 60 days to turn them around, literally. I mean, we got them all in the black. And it was just, you know, refocusing our efforts and focusing on little things. We had one store that may have been open only 3 or 4 days a week. You know, they might have been doing $5,000 to $7,000 a week. We got them up to doing $30,000 a week. You know, we got rid of the bad apples, add customer service, you know, not wanting to respond to the guest. Once people started seeing that we were very serious about the way in which, you know, we want to treat our guests, they started, and it resonated through the company that, hey, this guy's really serious. And, you know, they're not playing about this. And then we began to see people come back. When I visit the store, people are telling me they can see a difference in customer service, the way the place is being kept, our responsiveness to our guests. That's our external customer. Now, the challenge is getting that same thing done for our internal customer. And I'm really happy to lead that charge to build trust with our franchisees.
This is like a real example of undercover boss, right? It's good. We've got one of our full-time MBA advisory board members has a question from Zoom, a tough one for you.
All right.
We are regular Fuddruckers customers because it is great value for a quality burger. Are you prepared to lose existing customers who understand this value as you increase prices to support this gourmet vision?
Yes, I am. We got to retrain our customer base, to understand our value proposition. Right? We are not fast food. So you asked me how we're going to do that. We're going to improve upon the quality that we already have. Right? We're redoing our gourmet burger formulation right now to improve on the burger patty that we're doing. So we're not going to raise the price and keep everything the same. Right? I turned over every rock. Right? So when I look at our burger patty, I wanted to make it better than what it was. I had to look myself in the mirror and be able to sell to you as my consumer that I'm delivering to you the world's greatest hamburger. And did I believe that when I first took the brand over? No. Do I believe that now with the new burger formulation that we have? Absolutely. And I'll stand on the Mount Zion and pronounce to everybody that we've got the world's greatest hamburger, right? And I'll be able to back that up with the blend that we created. But it is a gourmet blend that will give you a taste that will not be able to be duplicated by anyone else, right? Value proposition. The second thing that we overlooked was, you know, everybody loves us for a great burger, but we found a way to be able to invite guests that were overlooked before, and that's people who want to eat plant-based, right? So we made a strategic partnership with Beyond Meats to introduce a plant-based menu at Fuddruckers. We've created a vegan-friendly bun. So not just a menu item here or there, we've got an actual menu that we're going to be rolling out for people who eat plant-based. From burgers, you're going to get the same experience, different sizes, a specialty bun, right? We're improving our fries. We've got Beyond Chicken coming. You know, we've got Beyond hot dogs, Beyond sausages. I mean, it's going to be a dynamic rollout. Well, as we reintroduce ourselves to, and when I talk about our target customer, knowing who our target customer is, how we reach certain groups, we had to look at what we were presenting in order for us to be able to target everybody individually. So all the improvements that we're doing will support and substantiate and reposition ourselves as a gourmet hamburger brand. Will there be some heartburn in the beginning? Yes. I have a friend that's a funeral director. And he gave me an analogy one day that always stuck with me. He said, there's a guy in the same city as me that competes against me. And he'll do 10 $1,000 funerals a week. I'll do one $10,000 funeral a week. And at the end of the week, we wound up at the same position in terms of cash. My profitability was higher because I was running to the bank and he was running to the cemetery. So the reality is, in an example like that, every time the car cranked up, you had to have staff to drive it, right? Yeah. So the person who set the premium funeral is not doing as much work as, but you got a net neutral position. You both wound up at the same point, except for one guy did more work than the other, right? So the question becomes, when you establish yourself, I've never seen Mercedes-Benz. I'm a fan of Mercedes-Benz. It's my favorite car. I always have. The best of nothing, right? Those marketing strategies mean something, the best or nothing. So that means we will not compromise quality. Before we do that, we won't sell cars, right? But you're gonna pay for that. They do not discount them. You may see around Christmas time, they're trying to get rid of old inventory, right? But anytime something's new out, you're gonna pay the premium price. So they don't have to negotiate because there are people who want it and value it and understand what it is, right? And so that's how we've got to reposition ourselves as a brand. You know, we're not a fast food brand. We will not be a fast food brand. We can't afford to be a fast food brand. Our supply chain, way that it's structured, is not designed to compete against any brand that doesn't actually sell meat. We actually, cows, our food is actually made out of cows, right? Not all this other stuff, right? Actually, so we're buying beef, and our model is not sustainable. Our true competitors are TGI Fridays, Longhorn, those restaurants. That's who our competitors are. We don't compete against McDonald's, Burger King, and I mean they're not even in the same category, right? So we got to know who we are and our target market. I saw you here.
Yes, sir. So this is a great segue into what I was gonna ask. You talked a lot about providing a premium product. And then you mentioned going to universities, and anecdotally, especially when I was in college, I was kind of a poor folk. So how do you expect to reach that market, or what's your strategy to get there without competing as a value?
Sure. So what we want to do is like we've done in the college that we've done. So we've got 4 different size burger patties. We've got a 1/3 pound burger. We've got a 2/3, 1/2, and a pound. So our 1/3 burger was essentially our value burger. We won't offer the same full menu that will allow us more flexibility, but still have a very good 1/3 pound burger that we can offer as more of a value in that sense, than being able to offer all of the wide range of burgers that we have that can really get out of scope. I mean, we even have exotics, ostrich and elk, and all those burgers that we just know wouldn't work in a college. So the model that we built for non-traditional, if you will have a modified menu, and the burger size will be adjusted accordingly to a 1/3 pound as opposed to 1/2 or 2/3. Yes, sir.
How do you plan to use technology to increase the value on guest experience once they're in the door? Because like the app is mobile ordering curbside, but once they're actually in the doors and their guest experience is on location,
Sure.
what do you plan to use technology in that?
So, when people come to Fuddruckers, a lot of times, folks would kind of get frustrated because the line was always backed up. People come in and, there'll be a long line and, you kind of got to wait till you get to the point of sale. So some of the things we want to do is to bring kiosks into the restaurant. So, and even through our app and the way that we're designing the app is to allow people still that same dine-in experience, but you just do it ahead before you get there so you never have to deal with it. So it's 2 things. Create your crave, in my opinion, is Fuddruckers' greatest value proposition because it allows for customization. So in leveraging that, we wanted to transfer that over into a web-based, a mobile application that would allow us to allow people to be able to build out their whole entire order, shoot it to the restaurant. When you come in, you can just pick it up, go have a seat and not have to wait, right? That was one thing we wanted to do with our app, not necessarily be off-premise third party, to allow people to be able to do that. In addition to that, we wanted to have kiosks where people were able to do the exact same thing if they were in store and just go have a seat and not have to wait, right? And so we're developing that as we're going through our whole POS and digital menu board discussions now. That's a part of it to be able to allow guests to be able to leverage our technology that way. Yes, sir.
So with the blue ocean strategy, there is one advantage that you don't have much of predators in the ocean, right? But one of the limitations is you have very limited fishes there to eat you. So how are you going to go about maximizing the market cap from this point of time?
I'm sorry, what did you say about the fish? I'm sorry, I missed
I
you.
think that's one disadvantage of a blue ocean strategy is that you have limited fishes to poach, right? So with the gourmet kind of a thought, you understand it's not for the masses, it's for the niche segment.
Correct.
So how gonna capitalize the market so that I understand you're not competing with McDonald's and Burger Kings of the world. But if I see TGIF, Chili's in place like these, how are you gonna go head on head with these people?
So the the one thing that differentiates Fuddruckers even from the plate cost that we want to get at the same type of burger is that customization component, right? So there are key things that differentiate us even from those restaurants when you think about the experience, okay? So when you come to Fuddruckers, there are, so let's just say for instance, and let's just use TGI Fridays for example. You didn't see the person cooking it, you didn't get to choose the size burger patty you wanted. You may be able to choose your own temperature, but you definitely didn't get to build it yourself the way that you wanted it, right? And so people who come for as to Fuddruckers as a destination for that experience value that. That's one of the things that Coke even taught us about our current customer base is that what differentiated us from everyone else was that customization. So Create Your Crave allowed you to be able to effectively do that, right? And so we're not fast food, you know, kind of teetering between, we are like at an intersection, if you will, between, you know, that full service, QSR type, you know, uniquely positioned there in the middle. So, you know, a first mover status, right, which is what we were in the beginning, you know, you continually have to renew your blue ocean, as you know, because, you know, people start to catch up with you effectively. In this example, you know, people have actually really tried to duplicate Fuddruckers, but they have not been able to necessarily do that, right? And so, you know, that didn't mean that Fuddruckers could not improve. Didn't mean that we couldn't improve the beef. It didn't mean that we could not improve the guest experience and all the other things I'm telling you we want to do in order to be able to do that. But I'm trying to reposition and reestablish us and create and into turning a red ocean blue, right? So I'm not necessarily creating a new blue ocean because I'm competing within an already existing space. I'm trying to redefine our niche market and turn a red ocean segment blue. That's the strategy there. Yes, sir.
How much different has establishing this business plan for Fuddruckers been from your previous ventures where you started from the ground up?
Yeah.
Since Fuddruckers already had a reputation in the beginning.
It was a lot easier because I don't have to explain Fuddruckers to people. People know the brand. They know what to expect from the brand, right? They knew or what the brand was, right? But where we failed, again, as I've said, is reintroducing the brand to the customer base and renewing our value proposition. We have not done that. And so when I think about developing the strategy, there were certain things that I could X out and get really to the core, right? So I didn't have to worry about how am I going to introduce this new hamburger concept to people that had no legacy behind it, right? I didn't have to be concerned about that. It was more of a rebrand and repositioning of this brand within the market, you know, with a renewed energy and a renewed value proposition. But you know, the challenge is retraining a customer base that has for the past decade been trained that this gourmet hamburger you can get at a discount even if the company loses money, right? So those business decisions that were not mine, that were made, and we built strategy around competing against fast food, is something that I got to reverse, right? So I mean, that's my challenge. And so that's primarily where the focus has been, right? How we do that. And in order to be able to reintroduce that where it doesn't, well, it will in some instances, because I mean, there aren't drastic, you know, price changes. It's just reformulating, you know, our, you know, combo strategy and, you know, telling the story behind what people are actually paying for, the value of the beef, the fact that someone actually came in and through every step made a burger. Like we can go and bake them in a facility that you never see. They came in, bagged, and we sliced them and grilled them. No, they were made here, right? You know, and so that from scratch has a value to it, which is another reason why we can't compete with fast food because everything is processed, right? You know, the unskilled labor position literally just cutting open a box, right? You know, grabbing it out, put it on a conveyor does the work, comes out on the other end, you wrap it, put it in a bag, and boom. That's not what we are, right? You know, where you come in, we greet you, you choose your bun, whether it's wheat, whether it's gluten-free, whether it's traditional, whether it's our new vegan bun, then you choose what burger type you want, what, you know, size you want, what temperature you want to cook. Then that's a process, you know what I mean? And so that customized, and then when you get it, you know, you get to go to a produce bar and build it however you want. If you want 10 pickles, if you want 20 pickles, you can get it. If you want cheese sauce, put as much of it as you want on it. So then that, and you own that experience, and that becomes yours. That is a key differentiator between Fuddruckers and every other.
We got one question on Zoom. Daniel, if you could hear me, go ahead and unmute. You can ask directly.
Okay. Howdy, Nicholas. How you doing today?
How you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing well, doing well. Well, my question kind of comes in two parts. The first being, when I think really your situation, franchisees, acquisitions, restaurant management, strategic planning, I find myself overwhelmed and I'm not even in your position. So I guess the first question would be is how do you go about combating those obstacles and maintaining focus? And the second part would be for somebody who is wanting to be in a position such as yourself, say in the future, with those obstacles in mind, what advice would you give to that person to, I guess, have clear focus moving forward to accomplish those goals?
Great question, and thank you for that. So I'm a relationship person, and I think that you will all understand that business is built on relationships at some point. People do business with people they like. And so I had to recognize our franchisees as business partners and not view them as managers, okay? And so, you know, a franchisee is a person who took their hard-earned money, they put their assets, you know, at risk, and they bought into your franchise, and they could have bought into any franchise, right? So that meant that they felt like your company, its goals, your value proposition aligned with the things that they believed in, and they felt like that recipe for success would work for them and help them to be able to make a salary, create jobs for other people, and then build generational wealth for their family as well. And so when people do that, they've got to be treated with respect. You know, their opinions have to be valued. They have to be able to provide feedback in the brand. And unfortunately, not everyone was afforded the opportunity to be able to do that. So what I was tasked with doing is repairing the bridge between the franchisor and franchisees and the fragmented relationship, I mean, acrimonious to describe it at best, between both was a bridge that had to be built back very quickly. And so I had to kind of tap into, you know, my knack for relationship building and interpersonal connection with people to, you know, get them to believe in the vision, and one, you know, helping them understand that you actually respect them and you value them and you understand. So for me, it was different because I'm a franchisee too. So I'm in a unique situation, franchisee and franchisor. So I see it from both sides of the table. But as a grassroots entrepreneur that built a company, I understood where they were. So I understood what they needed as well as my internal customers. So to your point, you know, it's you know, you're balancing your internal and external customer, and each one of them have a completely different set of needs. And so, you know, it's a juggling act, but at the same time, it takes strategic thinking and strategic planning in order to be able to do it. Now, I've had to move very quickly because of the circumstances in order to be able to figure it out. So I probably get about 4.5 hours of sleep a day, probably for the past 4 months in order to be able to figure this thing out. But, you know, we're very intentional about the way we're going about doing it, and been very focused, you know, around ensuring that we deliver our value proposition, not only to our external customer, but also to our internal customer as well. So it is very involved, a lot of strategic planning, you know, but it's also a collaboration, because we have more of a diplomatic approach where we're allowing that engagement from our franchisees to help to shape, you know, our vision going forward, and, you know, how we execute as a brand, because they're as equally invested as I am, right? Because some of them have been franchisees as long as I've been alive. So, you know, they were able to teach me quite a bit, right? And And so we're in it together. So it's this philosophy of one brand, one team, and that's what we've been promoting. And so that's really, how up until this point, we've been able to measure, the success of our strategic plan so far.
Great. Well, we are
Thank you.
12 o'clock hour.
Okay.
So we want to make sure we're sensitive to Nicholas's time. Nicholas, thank you so
It's my
much
pleasure.
for joining us today. Nicholas did have one small request. He asked if we could get actually a photo of everyone together with him. So you want to try to see if we can still, see if we can still do it?
Yeah.
Maybe we can use the fact that there's the
Yeah,
theater seating.
sure.
So maybe if you all stand up and kind of maybe get a bit closer, we can do it from sort of from this angle. Okay? Awesome. Will she take- Oh, I wish I would have. Maybe we can do two, one with and one without. If you're, make sure you can be seen, so if you need to stand in the. Here You guys want to do a gig 'em? You didn't hear Demetria. We're down. Get in here. Sorry. Hold on. We definitely need Jasmine in here. And one without a mask?
Nope.
All right.
She's learning to breathe now. Ready? Fantastic.
Jeremy, one more without one.
We're going on Rich's LinkedIn, guys.
Huge following.
3, 2, and 1.
Awesome. Thank you, Zoomers, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it. Next one's gonna be at Fuddruckers itself. Get ready. We're gonna do a field trip. Lunch, I'd like to do. Sorry? Yes, yeah. I I'll text you. Let me just
I don't think it's.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.